In just a second, we're going to get into a little bit of analysis of what went down in Iowa. But first, we thought it'd be fun to look at the Iowa caucuses by the numbers. So there is an anonymous caucus polling place in Iowa, some sweaty gym. But let's take it to the numbers. First up, the winners, as they are. So the Ted Cruz picked up 8 delegates along the way, 7 by these two, Trump and Rubio, and Ben Carson rounded up in 4th place with 3 delegates moving on to New Hampshire now. When you look at the breakdowns, Cruz went away with 27.6%. Trump was close behind with 24.3%, and Marco Rubio right behind him, sort of upsetting some of the pollsters in what they thought would be a runaway victory for this guy by a lot more points. Looking at the rest of the field, Rand Paul came in with 4.5%, but he still managed to split 1 delegate each with all of these guys down. Kasich with 1.9% of the vote to his 4.5%. So some interesting numbers there. Jeb Bush came in with 2.8% of the vote. Interestingly enough, spent the most money in Iowa, but still wound up on the second screen here. And Rand Paul did jump up, but he also is no longer in the race. So we'll see where his 4.5 go. Moving on to our final slide here. You look and see that about 180,000 Republican caucus goers made it a big night for Republicans showing up. I heard a lot of reports of people being out of classrooms and into hallways, and some folks not even being inside because they missed the time. But Ted Cruz did best with evangelical voters, people who were very conservative, as they describe themselves. And Marco Rubio, a bit of a surprise, had the best sort of same-day deciders, so he converted a lot of folks on caucus night. So that's Iowa by the numbers. Now we're going to get into a little bit more analysis with our favorite Vito and Vito. From a cornfield to a 3-way race. Has the quest for the Republican, a crowded field to a 3-way race, has the race for the Republican nomination really come down to a political novice, an evangelical firebrand, and a young upstart? Now, they would have you believe so, but we're about to find out how our guest, the co-host of the Vito and Vito Show, live every Thursday night at 8 on Speaker, that's an app, handicap the race. And back at the table for a look back at the caucus and the look ahead to the primaries in New Hampshire, South Carolina, and beyond are the Vice President of the Brooklyn Young Republicans, Vito DiGiovanni. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Good to be back.
And we also want to welcome his co-host and cohort, Mr. Vito Palmeri. Welcome back, sir.
What's up?
So we had the winners and the losers here, but I think one of those headlines that should have emerged was really the fact that the pollsters were so off on this. They were really saying that Trump, to his liking, and he liked to talk about it in Crow, was really going to make a strong showing, but he just couldn't make it work in Iowa.
You know, when you look at the polls, you have to understand that they are surveying only a certain amount of Republicans. You know, maybe it's 100, 1,000. It's a small fraction compared to the thousands and thousands that actually do vote. And for the Iowa caucus, Ted Cruz was neck and neck with Donald Trump. And then that does not take into account the thousands of more people who don't get polled but do come out to vote.
Which seems funny, because like a state like Iowa, it seems like you'd be able to talk to everybody there and say, hey, how are you voting? But what do you think about the whole 7-point thing? He was supposed to be favored by 7 points, but he was in 2nd place.
Well, I mean, when you look at Donald Trump, we have to understand he's a populist. And we have to understand that Donald Trump is going to arouse a good part of the conservative base. He hits on 2 issues that are most important, the issue of Islam and the issue of immigration. And that fires up the base. But Ted Cruz has a proven record of trying to fight those 2 things. So when you look at Ted Cruz, he can run on his record and he can try to, show the voters of Iowa and the voters across the country just what he's trying to do, what he has done, and stuff like that. Donald Trump has to sort of make up this resume and just go on his word, and I think that's the distinction, and voters see that.
Well, one thing that he was out front saying was, we're going to have a big turnout. You got to, I don't care if you're in a hospital bed, you got to get out and vote. And a lot of people did. We had record numbers. Just 180 was what we came back with. But like I said, a lot of people I heard on the radio were like shut out, and the polling places were closed. And if you show up late, the door is already closed. It's not like a voting thing where you get to go until 11 or whatever. But it still didn't pan out for him. So how do you think that's going to bode in New Hampshire and beyond?
Well, the thing is, Donald Trump's got the big numbers to come out, right? Who's going to vote for Donald Trump really gets it going for this primary season. But who has a better ground game? Ted Cruz was out there doing hundreds of events, just like Marco Rubio. We never heard the media, so far we know that Donald Trump was actually doing a lot of events. He was more speeches, packing stadiums, making more of a spectacle.
Yeah, he didn't really kiss all the babies in Iowa, admittedly.
Right. And we have to see if he can do that in New Hampshire and other places down the South, where it's not just high polling, where he actually has to get down to the groundwork and make the campaign do some work.
But Vito, did your boy Cruz play dirty with this whole, like, Ben Carson said he wants you to vote for me? Donald Trump was pissed. We had a screen earlier of him saying he was dirty. He sent out a press release.
Well, the Donald's going to be mad because he lost. And understandably, that's true and stuff like that. But Cruz didn't play dirty, and I don't like this tactic that's going around. It's going around in a couple of conservative sites as well.
Yeah.
And I don't like that because as a conservative, I don't think Cruz played dirty. CNN even reported that Dr. Ben Carson was taking a leave of absence, or he was leaving the campaign trail. So it was reported in the media, and Cruz just took that information, the Cruz campaign, and sent out an email. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see anything like that. I don't see any deception at all.
Okay.
But most importantly, I think it has to do with the ground game, because even if you look at the polls before, take away the Ben Carson issue, Cruz was still giving Trump a hard time. The ground game is important. He's knocking on doors, kissing babies, whatever you want to call it. That matters in a campaign because it shows the voters that we care about you. And that most related with Ted Cruz.
So if we're looking at the number 3 spot, everyone's talking about the winners, but clearly Marco Rubio is the winner of the thing. Is Marco Rubio emerging as the adult in the room while Cruz and Trump go at each other?
He came out really strong in Iowa, mainly because, as we was looking on the screen before, said because for people that were worried about electability.
Same day deciders.
Right. So that's going to easily go towards, well, Donald Trump has no shot at winning, they might think, because he's crazy, and Ted Cruz is way too conservative. So you go for the more moderate and establishment-like because you think he has a chance to win, and that's why you're really pulling up third. And plus, with a great ground game and getting really active in the last couple of days in Iowa, definitely helped.
You smirked while he was talking. This is why it's great when you're not on the radio. This is all the nuance you miss when you're listening to the show. What were you smirking
Well,
at?
I'm smirking at the fact that people like to say Marco Rubio is going to be the spoiler. He's the adult in the room. I think that's nonsense. First of all, Marco Rubio is not going to win the nomination for one thing and one thing only. He's not as conservative. And that matters. The primary, you have to be conservative. You have to be conservative in general, I think, in order to get a good Republican turnout.
And then move steadily to the center.
No, I don't think so at all. No.
Election general comes?
No, not at all. I mean, Reagan didn't do that, and I think that's something that we need to take a look at. And when you just want to make this point about Marco Rubio for a second, people are going to say, look at the great work he did in Iowa. I think it is going to be a three-way race right now. Rubio's proven that he's the establishment pick. This is not the year for an establishment candidate. Look at the Democratic side as well. A self-described socialist, democratic socialist, is running for president and giving Hillary a hard time. This is not the year for a political insider.
So who is the Bernie on the GOP side? Rand Paul's out of the race now. If we need someone who's bringing the heat who might be slightly electable, where's your Bernie? Who's going to emerge? And it's not in this field, clearly.
I would say it's Ted Cruz.
Really?
Yeah, for principal size, you have the very far left.
You just blew my mind. Really? Ted Cruz is your Bernie?
Because Bernie Sanders is very principled, a very principled progressive. He's a socialist. Very far left, and very anti-establishment, even though he's holding office. On the right, the farthest right is Ted Cruz. He's very principled, very conservative, very solid, and he's the most anti-establishment, even though he's holding office. So they're both on the opposite side of the spectrum, pulling the ground.
One thing that's funny to me is the messaging. I want to ask you guys about the future for the GOP. Looking past this thing, are they having an identity crisis? Like, who is the GOP going to be? Like, you evoked Reagan a second ago, but we haven't had a Reagan-like figure for the GOP in a generation. Like, where are you guys going?
Well, I think that's an important question, because a lot of people want that Reagan figure. And I think Cruz is establishing that Reagan coalition. I don't want people to underestimate the power of Ted Cruz's campaign. It really is important. Donald Trump, although he gathers huge amounts of people in the stadium and tons of people in basketball arenas, whatever, the deal is this: Donald Trump is not as principled as Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is this principled candidate. He's establishing a coalition of evangelicals, libertarians, conservatives, moderate Republicans, whatever you call it. And he's trying to establish something on the Republican side that we have never seen before, or at least since Reagan. So that's important to see. Is it an identity crisis? I don't know if it's an identity crisis. I mean, the Democrats are going through one as well. You're going to elect a moderate, Democrat or a centrist in Hillary Clinton, or are you going to go full on socialist?
Yeah.
Did we have an identity crisis with the Democrats with Obama when, not to mention he's the first African-American president, but his views are absolutely different than Hillary Clinton. So it's always an identity crisis. We're always changing flavors and things like that. But I think the GOP is focusing and harnessing its power right now in so many different directions that come, the convention, people are going to have to solidify against one candidate.
So who picks up the votes that maybe Ben Carson, if you believe the Cruz press release, or someone like Rand Paul, who picks up those votes when those guys leave? Who's the most attractive in the base?
I think for Rand Paul voters, they should either go to Donald Trump or Ted Cruz. They might go to Donald Trump because, like everybody else voting for Donald Trump, they're just fed up with the system and politics and might just lean towards Trump. But I can see them definitely going towards Ted Cruz because Cruz and Rand Paul are the most conservative in the country right now. And the views are similar, libertarian, conservative, constitutional kind of politics that they play. I think Ted Cruz can definitely attract some Rand Paul people.
Is it time for Christie to get back to Jersey?
Yes.
Are you calling it?
He should have never been in the race to begin with, but I have a bias. But when you look at Chris Christie, he's going to wait as well with John Kasich till New Hampshire because right now they're doing pretty well.
They're committed to at least showing up in New Hampshire.
Sure, because New Hampshire's a more moderate state as opposed to a more conservative state. So when you look at Christie and Bush, or when you look at Kasich, these guys, I don't think they're going to do anything with the base. They're not going to really resound the base. But they're going to try to pull some establishment money and establishment influence from Rubio. And that's the kicker. We keep talking about all the different conservatives running and all the different stripes of conservatism. But what about all the stripes of moderate Republicans running? I mean, Marco Rubio was trying to identify as a unifier. He's not really trying to fight Washington. He's trying to say how we can come and fix it. You have someone like John Kasich who's running on this idea that he is, again, a unifier. So there's so many different strands running. It's still real too early to tell. But I think if you got to narrow it down to 3 people that you really got to focus on, like I said, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz. 3 guys at the top. Yeah, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio.
In that order? Trump, Cruz, Rubio?
I still think it's too early to call. We don't know yet. I mean, you have so many different states with so many different, preferences and value systems.
All right, well, I'm going to pull out my coin because I want to ask you about the Democrats, and there's a lot of coins with Bernie and Hillary. So, okay, Tails, you're going to answer this one first. What does a Bloomberg do to the race? Does he blow up the whole thing?
Michael Bloomberg will definitely take votes away from Bernie Sanders. Now, he said he'll only jump in the race if Hillary Clinton loses the nomination, which means he's definitely very establishment, as we know, and definitely to the left. So he will hurt Bernie Sanders, which will help any Republican candidate who makes the nomination.
Especially on the view of guns. I mean, Bloomberg, he's very anti-Second Amendment. He runs around, he always tries to stop gun violence, and he runs all these, campaigns, whatever, against guns. So that's not going to bode well with the conservative base, especially after the Obama years where, we've seen this assault on guns, or at least we've seen this move towards curtailing the Second Amendment. I could see Bloomberg standing up saying, look, I'm the more reasonable candidate on the Democrat, or at least in the middle, but Democrats will be more appealed.
So does Bloomberg steal any votes from the other billionaire in the race? He's like, listen, I didn't file bankruptcy. My skin is a natural color. I'm very responsible. I got New York in good shape. Does he pull any votes from that GOP party, or does you think it's strictly siphoning from the Dems?
I think it's definitely going to come from the Dems because Donald Trump, aside from being a loud, big-mouth billionaire, he also takes conservative stances such as closing the border. He wants to ban Muslim immigration for a little bit. These things that do attract voters from the conservative base. Bloomberg is definitely, Donald Trump says, I love the Second Amendment, I love women, this and that. And then Bloomberg's going to definitely stay with his views as mayor and go against the Second Amendment, banning plastic and sodas and this and that. So I think he's going to stay on the left.
But just don't forget, quickly, Rudy Giuliani was a mayor from New York City. Says, look what I did for New York. He ran on,
He was America's mayor.
He was America's mayor, exactly. Howard Stern said that, who I love. So you look at this and you say to yourself, okay, look, another mayor from New York could probably do it. But he had some views that weren't going to bode well with the conservative base. He was pro-choice. That's not going to do very well in the conservative South. And his
he also couldn't fund himself like Donald Trump is, and now he's mad because you're not appreciating that he's funding himself for himself. So you should show some appreciation for Donald Trump.
Don't underestimate Trump. He's still powerful. He's still Donald Trump. New Hampshire, I believe he's going to win. I think he's going to do very well in South Carolina.
What does it mean for Trump to win in New Hampshire and show well in South Carolina? Does that undo all of the goodwill for Cruz and Rubio?
I don't think so. New Hampshire is much more moderate than Iowa. Iowa has many more evangelicals, and just like the South. So New Hampshire would probably go to Donald Trump, but then you got South Carolina and many other states in the South that I think he'll be battling out with Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz comes off more very Christian-based, and Donald Trump. The first thing that Trump that comes to my mind is not a Christian.
Well, 2 Corinthians.
Yes.
2 Corinthians walk into a bar.
All right, you're going to have to hear the rest of that joke Thursday night on the Vito and Vito Show because we're out of time. But Vito and Vito, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.